Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our third quarter 2024 top selling master plans. I'm Tim Sullivan, Chief Advisory Officer at Zonda. I am joined by my longtime friend, associate, and partner in crime, Mollie Carmichael. We'll talk about Mollie in just a second. A couple things that we want to share as we get moving is that we have an incredible plan for today. And we'll start with a little bit about us. It's the advertisement, but also it's so important because we have so much information that's available to you in various different ways. We want to make sure you're aware of it. I'm also going to talk a little bit about Future Place. And from there, Mollie's going to dive into a whole bunch of stuff that we're finding through our master plan community research. But know that we're here to help. We can help you on the multifamily side, on the build to rent side, master plan communities. Mollie and I live and breathe those. We do financial analysis. Anything that has a solving issue related to what should we build, what's it worth, how to optimize your land use, that's where we can help. And note that in Enterprise, which is the base format to get access to all of our information, the master plan information is in there now. So you're able to track it nationwide. It's important because it also allows you to either do subdivision or master plan work. And furthermore, we've taken the master plan research and we have a published research document now, much of which we'll talk about, just little pieces here and there today. But the good news is that it's a published research document. You can zero in on this, subscribe to it. And by the way, the get together today is part of that process. Now, we've got a little crazy at Zonda because we're not just doing market research. We're not just looking at land uses. We're also connecting to the consumer. And our new home source and digital solution work is ultimately trying to help create frictionless interaction with the consumer. And we're doing that and then also being able to create some digital product, which Mollie has had a huge amount of work working with. And we're there to help. And again, think of it as frictionless connection to the consumer. And one of the other things that we love to do is pull our conferences together, get a whole huge number of people talking about what matters. On the left-hand side, you can see Build to Rent. That's coming up February 3rd and 4th. Please meet us there. You'll see 400 of the smartest people in that part of the industry. And then Builder 100, which is the preeminent get-together in the industry. That's going to be May 5th and 7th. Please join us. Now, we had promised you a little bit about Future Place, and I'll start just talking about a couple of the key takeaways. And Mollie, if I forget anything, please step up. Our conversation, by the way, opened with Ali Wolf talking about the national economy and all the things that are moving. But a few of the things that came out that were really important is the preeminence of the baby chaser, the boomer and Gen X, that are following their kids to be near the grandkids and the demand that is coming up with. But ultimately, she zeroed in on the fundamental element about life happens. And the reason we say that's important is because it's the underlying demand, no matter what happens economically, the underlying demand that demographics force into housing. Mollie talked about winning master plans. You're going to see some of that today, so I won't go too deeply into it. But Mollie, one of the things that you said that I thought was terrific is that people retire where they vacation. So think about that if you're looking at the active adult side of the world or age targeted. Understand the vacation market, and you'll be a step ahead. We had a really cool gathering of Texas developers. And there was even conversation that Houston is the Disneyland of land development, which if you're in Houston, you understand that completely. But the conversation was really about zeroing in on creating places that people would pay for, the ROI of community development. And there was a huge conversation about that, some terrific visuals, some of which you'll see today from Mollie because she's constantly monitoring that. Then Dan Buettner Jr., the Blue Zone guru, got together with us. And if you haven't heard
That was
about Blue
awesome.
Zones, go ahead, Mal, say it again.
That was awesome. That presentation was fantastic.
And the concept is that there are a handful of locations worldwide. They include Sardinia, Okinawa, Ikaria, if I'm saying that right, in Greece, Loma Linda, and Nicoya in, which country was that, Mal? Nicoya.
I don't
It's in
Course.
Central America, guys. That's I
Yes.
just can't remember the country. But
Yep.
it's he was challenging us to be well-being warriors. And he kept saying it's so simple, it's difficult because it's about moving. Just walk, move, embracing the right outlook, strategies to downshift, to take it easy. Talked about eating wisely and using wine as a very important part of that, but in moderation, and then connecting with loved ones. And while it sounds simple, as he said, it's a very difficult thing. Our legend was Adrian Foley with Brookfield. And you might hear a little bit from Mollie about that in a minute, but Adrian was terrific. Adrian left us with a really interesting statement, and it was the harder I work, the luckier I get. And that's borne out for him. Now, there was a capital discussion. We went deep into land banking, and there was a conversation about how land banking has been used as an M&A tool in many different markets. And then also the concept of how difficult it is to finance master plan communities. And there was really a consensus that there's not one answer. There are multiple ways to do it because it's so difficult to do now, but public financing is so important. Kimberly Byram, our multifamily expert, talked about some really cool things on the multifamily side of what's happening in master plans. And she showed us that there was a premium for apartments in master plans. Take that one home. A premium for apartments in master plans that get higher rents. Then there was a conversation about joint strategies for development. And this really came down to incrementalism, the concept of what we build, it's intentional, and we do it piece by piece to create the whole. Then the evolution of the town center. Conversation was deep about this. And the concept of allowing us to have places to assemble outside of our house. In the old school mall, if you remember the third place, it's not our home,
For
it's not
sure.
our work, it's the gathering place. That's what the conversation was about. And then, of course, the future gazers. We had an icon. Spencer Paget was talking about the hedge against the climate and what we have to do to watch this. Clint and the Estridge team, which Mollie will mention in just a second, we acknowledge them for their masterpiece of harmony. And then we went into wellness by design. And the important thing here was the conversation about goats as an amenity. We'll tell you more about that another time. But just so you know, there was a conversation that went deep into that. And the concept of putting schools by a trail that are around and connected to housing, what a concept to get our kids out and moving. Remember what the Blue Zone said. Point number one, move. So ultimately, it came down to three things. The first one, I'm going to quote Adrian again. The harder I work, the luckier I get, whether it's in land development, master plan community, or in your life. Number two, Irvine, which was identified as our community of the world, they gave us lessons about taking property from a ranch to a city. And last but not least, our job in this world is LPSF, life per square foot. The closer we get to intensifying that, the more successful we are. Mollie, what did I miss?
You know what? You had a great recap. There were so many great takeaways. And for those of you who didn't get to join us this year, you have to come next year because I mean every single presentation was great. I was just totally taken back by not only we have three awards as part of our future place. The Legend Award. I mean, every time I hear Adrian speak, he's brilliant, but I think my big takeaway, and I think the thing I was the most impressed with Adrian is he was so modest about accepting the award. He's like, it's not my award, it's the team's award. And if you want to give it to the team, and ultimately that's why he accepted. And it was very much on behalf of the whole Brookfield team and all that they've done. And, you know, that's why he's such a great leader, in my opinion. And Estridge got the Masterpiece Award, which is just a builder who went above and beyond. And if you haven't seen their communities, they're in Indiana and Indianapolis, and they just do such a great job. And he gave a great tribute to Paul Estridge, who was sort of the visionary, I think, originally on Harvest, which was this amazing community that they did. And then and I hope I got that right. It may be Harmony. I'm sorry, I may have gotten that wrong. And then the Irvine Company, which they just do it so well, and they're near build out for their entire master plan. And so many people when I worked there, and so many others, I mean, they don't just come from all over the US, they come from all over the world to learn about just really innovative planning, and just they do such a great job. And Rob Elliott did a very eloquent, acceptance there too. It just all around, we love to honor excellence, but the whole intention behind Future Place is looking forward. And there were so many great pieces on that. That one of the big takeaways, and we're hearing so much about it, just how wellness is becoming such a big amenity. So I can't tell you how many communities I'm working on right now that have Blue Zone as a foundation, whether they call it Blue Zone, but they're looking for those kind of pieces. If you want to live to be 100, you want to live in one of those communities. So I could go on and on, Tim. It was fantastic. And as always, I can't, I'm a huge fan of yours, but it's unbelievable how you lead these 2-day, almost charrette-like, visionary workshops with all these great leaders throughout the country. You do such a great job. And as always, great recap too.
Thank you. And before we get started, as you can tell by the language that Mollie uses, and if you've had a chance to see her present live or Memorex, on a webinar, this is what she lives and breathes. And I was talking to Mollie yesterday, and she was in Texas. I talked to Mollie last week. She was in Northern California. I talked to Mollie often, and she's often in various parts of the country. So here's the intro. When you hear us talk about the master plan community information, it's not just data from the ground up. It's us having boots on the ground, looking down at what's being built, looking forward at what should be built, and that's what we're trying to bring to you today. Mollie is one of our principals. She has been a home builder, land developer, as you heard. She's a mom, she's a friend, she's funny. Nobody laughs faster and is more self-deprecating than Mollie is, and she has more energy than anyone I've ever met. So with that, Mollie, I'm going to go off camera. Please take it away, and then at the very end, Mollie will give you a couple ways to find the data that we have. Thank you, everybody. Mollie, please take it away.
Thanks, Tim. I am wearing today my sweatshirt I got from Kissing Tree yesterday. So I was out with the Brookville team and one of their active adult communities, and it's just, they really do a great job. So it is a lot of fun. A lot of the stuff we present, it's not just data. We're out there living and breathing, um, and helping teams across the country do this stuff. So it's a lot of fun to be here, and I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your calendar to join us. So let's dive into this stuff. As always, I just like to reinforce we do this a little differently than just looking at sales. We are looking at sales, but we're also looking at starts, we're looking at closings. And the reason we look at all of that is we want to look at sales. To me, is about the builders. Starts has, it's about the developer. Can they get those lots to you? And then closings is the success really of the entire team. And so that's why we believe it's overall performance is all of the ingredients there. We have a pretty sophisticated way of looking at this stuff. We are looking at not just sales. And thank you to all of you that are participating in that and sharing that information with us. But we roll that up from the project to the master plan. So we aren't looking for one number. We are looking at every single number for every single community that's selling, but the neighborhoods within those communities rolled up to the master plan. So there's quite a bit of work that goes into it, but we really appreciate your help with that. So we're going to look at the update. I always look at this like it's a horse race as we're getting towards the end of the year, but we're going to look at really who's winning. And there are two clear leaders for sure that continue to be out there in front. And I think they're going to be there for a while for sure. And number one, of course, is the Villages, followed by Lakewood Ranch. And then number three falls definitely way behind Lakewood Ranch, but has been leading for some time, and that is Centera. And we'll go through some of the details for this. As you look at what the big changes have been by comparison, you'll see that Babcock Ranch is climbing up. So they climbed up to number 6. Summerlin actually dropped down to number 7. Babcock, I think, is going to continue to climb up. You'll actually see that in the presentation based on the amount of inventory, finished lots, and some of that stuff that they have available. And Summerlin has quite a bit to go. So I suspect they're going to stay in the top 10 too for some time. And they do a fantastic job. As we look at overall Q3 sales, again, very, very similar, but Village is clearly far out in front, where Lakewood Ranch still clearly number 2, but not quite that same distance together. As we look at the overall top master plans, just a little bit more detail. We'll go through this. You guys know the villages. I mean, uber amenitized, super affordable, and largely mostly under 600,000 in price, and a lot of it's under 500,000 in price. You're going to see that a lot of these active adult locations seem to be thriving right now, not just the villages, but a lot along the Southeast and in the Florida markets. You can find all of this great data in our master plan database and more. You can get down to the individual profiles, but I love this summary. It goes into the builders that are there as well as the amenities, and you can see all the different product types. As we look at actually number 2, Lakewood Ranch, again, you can see they have 55 active projects today, and they have active units remaining is a little bit over 4,000, a wide variety of different product types, and they have villages amongst that, as you guys know, with quite a few different kinds of lifestyles. And you can see all the builders that are playing within Lakewood Ranch there in the lower right-hand corner. Huge range in sizes, 1,100 square feet, all the way up to almost 5,400 square feet in size. So just quite a bit of differences there. And then the very last one, the third one, is Centera. We'll just hit the top 3. You can get all the detail on the remainders of those on our master plan database. But Centera is actually in the Houston market, and you can actually see, again, quite a few projects there, 33 projects, not quite the same segmentation from a price perspective, so much closer together, and 1,100 square feet to 4,000 square feet, so much bigger sizes overall. Quite a few projects, but that price point's much more condensed. Houston's a really interesting market. We talked a lot about that, I think, in Future Place. I think we asked Adrian about that one. He was very bullish on Houston, and I'm bullish on Houston because it hasn't quite had the same recovery as the Dallas market or the Austin market. So it seems like it has some bandwidth. I do know that there is definitely some tension there in that market, but I think there is some bandwidth and runway left for that one. So let's dive in. We're going to just look at the sales performance because I know that's something that's really important. So when we look at Q2 versus Q3, again, we have quite a few that have actually climbed up. So Cadence has jumped up to 3, Bridgeland's jumped up to 7, Silverleaf has jumped up to 9, and Murata's up to 10. 4 did drop down to number 4, and you'll see some of that in relationship to the overall market. But when we look at that in comparison to the overall top performers for Q3, again, major difference in performance is just Babcock and Summerlin, but definitely some movement there on the sales side for sure. As we look at how they got there, you can see if you track these. So let me explain this table because there's a lot on this table. When you look at the colors on the left, that represents the color that ties to each of those master plans. So when we look at the villages, again, you can see it pairs all the way across. So sales, starts, and closings, they rank number 1 across the board. But when you start to look at areas like Welland Park, you'll see that they're slightly higher in starts and slightly higher in closings. When you look at Babcock, which is an interesting one, you'll see they're number 5 in starts, they're number 7 actually in closings, but they don't have that same ranking in the sales category, which is really why that's pulling them up to top performers. Now, I suspect with the right segmentation and price point, I think they could climb into the top 5 next year. So watch that community closer. When we look at the overall locations, you can see for Q3, the top 25 master plans. Look at the numbers sitting there in Florida and of course, Texas and Nevada. Those seem to be sort of the big categories or the big geographies that are winning right now. And again, so much of that ties with retiree, no tax states, markets that are definitely more affordable for some of those more expensive locations like New York, California, and some of those markets. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys, those are the percentages. So Florida represents 46% of those sales, and Texas is 24%, and you'll see Nevada at 16%. The Southeast is somewhere around 7%. California is around 8. And eight's pretty good considering how expensive it is. When we look at Q3 and we look at overall the sales to start ratio, you'll actually see Silverado, Summers Corner, the Villages, high sales to start ratios. And we actually have much lower percentages as it relates to Babcock, as an example, or Riverstone or Murata. So we have more starts happening there than we actually are seeing sales. I'm not sure if that'd be an interesting one to look at, if that is actually a segmentation issue or what's going on there. Um, but you will see, as far as availability of lots and things like that, Babcock should kick in, I think, next year more so than ever. As we look to the future and sort of where master plan will be going, and some of the key categories to look at, I always sort of want to underscore this when I'm looking at amenities and the things we should be thinking about in different master plans, and why do we do all this stuff, and spend the money and the time. And the reality is, if you look at master plans in relationship to the individual communities that are out there, it's selling at a much higher pace. And this may not seem significant until you start to look at the relationship of price points, from the MPC to the individual. And I'll touch on that too. So overall, as of recent, it's about a 2.5 versus 2.3 from an individual perspective. And when we look at overall the active adult world, it becomes very dramatic there. And so much of that, and I saw this definitely at Kissing Tree, and I've seen this in so many active adult communities throughout the country, that's really the draw to get that customer to leave the home they've been married to, no pun intended, for the last 30 years, and they've built all these memories. That lifestyle component is so crucial, and so is the affordability piece of it. So that's why you see markets like Florida, Texas, Nevada, so successful in those categories. And we're going to see a huge shift there, and we'll talk a little bit about that with demographics and things like that. But on average, when you look at master plan, your amenities should cost somewhere in that 1 to 4%, in relationship to overall revenue. And the reality is, it drives anywhere from 3 to 20% in home price. There was a great presentation. Paul Johnson did this, and they did that with First Service Residential at the very end of Future Place. And they showed it up to like 30% in value, depending on how you look at it. I could argue, how you look at that analysis, you've got to take into account lot size, and you've got to take into account, which of course translates to density. And then you've got to look at the age of those, all those things. But I think we saw a very similar analysis or conclusion to what I'm showing here. And so whenever somebody says to me, should we invest in those amenities, the translation's far greater than that cost. And so it's such an important part, not just from a cost perspective, but the kinds of things that you're going to include, making sure that customers really value that. How is the world changing? Understanding placement and making sure they're the right amenities is really what we try to be a part of. So as you're setting the table for growth, just looking at, and you could see it in the geographies of where that's happening, when we just look at highest population locations, there it is. I mean, Florida and Texas certainly rate very high, by comparison. And of course, they have the fastest selling master plans. It's also very affordable. When we look at overall the top generations, and I've showed this over and over again, you can actually see, boomers and Gen Y. They're certainly the biggest demographic. I think the biggest shift, though, as we look at the last, Great Recession, and we look at where we're at today, we didn't have these great dynamics as it relates to population growth. So boomers are finally at the age where they're ready to retire, and it's this huge population. And Gen Y is in full family bloom mode, which they have to move, they want to move. And so that's all very positive, no matter really what happens to the economy. And so it's the life happens stuff that Allie's referencing for sure, but it's also demographics kind of positioned really well for a strong housing economy in the future. And so again, as we look at those, and this is updated, and you're going to see some of the stuff we're doing with our recent merger with BDX and all the stuff we're doing there. We have so much access to data. We're now coming out with a custom segmentation program that really is going to put this data to work for you. So when we look at the biggest buyer profiles out there in the market, you can see what they look like by region, and it is largely those families and retirees. And that's really what's driving a lot of the growth we just went through. When we look at some of the data, and this is looking at the activity, looking at who's looking at new home stores, what are those buyer profiles? These are some of the new segments that we're actually going to begin to introduce. We're looking at price points, which is affordable, classic, premium, luxury, and ultra. You'll actually see that changes whether you're in a Salt Lake market or you're in an Orange County, California market, or you're in Florida. That's going to translate to that local market. The other part that we're really looking at is what drives a lot of the home purchase behavior, which is life stage. So again, price and life stage make a big part of this. And when you look at this, you can see the mature non-family market is a third of the market out there shopping today. Mature families, interestingly enough, is 22%. Young family is 32%, and young non-family is about 13%. And when we look at really where do you want to design product for, where should the bulk of your segmentation be? And we'll look at that here. 40% are looking in those affordable price points. Again, we're localizing this, so affordable might mean something different in Orange County than it means in Salt Lake or Florida. And then same thing as you get to those different price points. The percentage that are in like luxury, certainly it's much, much smaller, but you can see really where the highest demand is. And that focus on affordability is going to be the biggest challenge I think we have in the coming years. This is really, you can see those retirees and why it's really shifting dramatically. And you can see that growth. We're finally there. Average age for retirement is somewhere between 62 and 67. And it's a huge number that are now finally ready to retire. And we're seeing that certainly in the master plan numbers, but we're also seeing that in all project level data and where success is happening. It's going to continue over the next 10 years too. And so when you look at the growth of that 65 plus population, it grew about 40% over the last 10 years, and it's going to continue to grow straight through to 2034. So lots of success there in the future. When we look at overall net worth too, you can see certainly it's not only a huge growing number of people looking to retire, but they have a lot of money. And so what they want is huge. But they have the money to do it. I will say, no matter how much money they have, the biggest issue I think for that buyer, the biggest concern for that buyer always is financial security. So they will tend to spend a lot less, and I'll show you exactly what those numbers look like here shortly. When we look at actually overall, these are all the segments we have from ultra value all the way up to elite. You'll see these by life stage. You can see in those price ranges for affordable, classic, premium, and luxury, you'll actually see the biggest numbers really happen in affordable, and you'll actually see the big numbers are mature non-family, again, sort of those move downs, those boomers looking to move, affordable young families. So those two categories being sort of the biggest segments, then followed by affordable and mature family. And then you'll jump over to the classic sections. That's where those numbers really start to become very large. So again, classic young family, and again, classic mature non-family. So those categories that we talked about, they're going to continue to be very strong. They're out there looking today, and providing the right solutions is huge. So as we look to performance by geography for these different master plans, again, number one is Florida, number two is Texas, and number three is in Nevada. When we look at overall third quarter's top master plan markets today, Houston's actually number one, number two is Dallas, and then Phoenix being number three. And you can see most of the markets in the top 10, it's 70% are actually Texas and Florida, with the bulk of that activity. When we look at overall the active adult market, again, Florida is huge for that. And then followed by Arizona, certainly, and then going up to Vegas in that category. So again, those affordable markets are really what's driving so much of that activity in the surrounding area. When we look at overall sales rates, this was really fascinating to me. When you look at Hilton Head, Charleston, Miami, Myrtle Beach, even, you're seeing some of the highest sales absorptions actually sitting in the coastal areas of the Southeast, and then coming down to certainly the eastern portion of Florida, and then coming over to the west in Naples. Those are the top sales performances. And then you also have some really strong activity sitting there again, Las Vegas and the Inland Empire. When we look at overall performance by segment and we look at all ages, I mean, when you look at this, master plan wins in every category. So every single square footage range, it's a slightly higher sales absorption in every single square footage. So that's pretty compelling. But look at the sales absorptions just under 1,500 square feet and how compelling that is. Really coming up with new innovative products that can really sort of serve those affordable price points, and small seems to be okay. When we look at some of the stuff that Lennar is doing, D.R. Horton's doing, they're getting anywhere from 9 to 13 a month with these very small cottages. And again, they're just looking to afford a home today. That's a big part of it. We looked at the active adult world, again, huge numbers in that under 1,500 square feet. And so much of that is what we've been talking about. It's the affordability piece to this. But in almost all cases, you can see the MPC world for active adult is winning in so many categories. Largely, so many people ask me, what are the key sizes for active adult? And it tends to be, it's a wide range, but it's 1,200 to 2,400 square feet. And you can see it right here on the screen. When we look at overall sort of the price distribution, it's right there in the middle. 350 to 650 seems to be winning, but mostly that 350 to 550. And you could see that in the segmentation stuff in the leads database that we have as well. But as we talked about active adult, on average, the average active adult consumer shopping for a home is looking to cash out about 40 to 50% of their home equity. So said differently, they're going to buy a house equivalent to about 50 to 60% of the home that they live in today. So that's a great way to kind of target it. They also will, as Tim mentioned, they look to, if they can, they want to actually retire where they vacation most. That's where they have their fondest memories. That's where their families came together. It's always their goal to live there one day. So that's again why markets like Florida become so successful for destination locations to retire. The last big thing is, and I mentioned this over and over again, is just how important the financial security is. And it really does start first with, can I afford it, right? What price can I afford? And will I be able to afford this after I retire 30 years from now? Because we all think we're going to live to be 110. With blue zone communities, maybe you will. But that's where the wellness comes in, and the connectivity and replacing all that social infrastructure that's so important to us. All three of those pieces are really key to being successful in the active adult world. As we look to kind of the master plans that have had the greatest year-over-year change, really you can see, I'm going to highlight really the top 5 here, but overall, we're seeing the top 4 actually have over 100% in change. And then Cadence, which was number 5 on our top sellers as well, has had significant change as well. And 70% of 1,321 is a very big number. So Superstition Vistas, you'll actually see that's one of the top ones with change. You're going to actually see it's a value play, very much about affordability. What I found pretty interesting about this one is there's 175,000 acres, I think, with about 10,000 homes coming. So tons and tons of open space. It's D.R. Horton today, but Brookfield's coming, Pulte's coming, Tri Point's coming, Lennar's coming, David Weekley's coming, and so they have more to come in the future. The next one is actually Sunstone. You're going to actually, with this community, it's an extension of an existing community. There's a trilogy piece to it that has active adult and some of that stuff. So again, in the northern portion of Las Vegas, which tends to be more of a value play as well. So again, focusing on affordability. And then some really neat amenities I thought with this one too. So bike trails seem to be super popular, lots of trails. I'm seeing pump tracks pop up everywhere. The numbers on pump track is actually pretty fascinating to me too. But I just think getting outdoors and connecting to the trail system in this particular location is fantastic. And then some really interesting little park areas for kids. That was a cute little archaeology park that they had. And of course, Wi-Fi, for sure. Overall, top NPCs in the future, when we just look at the numbers, there's a reason why Lakewood Ranch and the villages are going to be there for a while. And I just focused on VDLs and lots under construction. And so Lakewood Ranch and villages still have big numbers there. But look at the numbers for Babcock. I think that's why we were seeing some of the numbers we saw there. They have huge numbers coming. So again, with the right price points and segmentation, they should really be popping up. Welland Park, Silverleaf, again, another affordable community. A lot of really cool stuff coming for that community. I've also walked that one as well. And then of course, Sunterra at number 6. That one probably will, to some degree, start to pop down if Babcock and Welland and those guys can really perform with 2,100 homes, BDLs and under construction coming. So as we get to top amenities, just some highlights here. I love this saying. I love Simon Sinek. I love a lot of the stuff he talks about, but I love the saying, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think so much of that is real, right? And so depending on what your story is behind your master plan, what people really want and really touching on that, it's really solving for the why. And I like to touch on this. This is something that has been so fascinating in the consumer research I've been doing for gosh, the last 20 plus years. And it really comes down to simply solving this in this order. And I think that's so important because what happens is the more you solve for each one of these, it really influences the overall premium for your community. So your lowest price is all price driven. So that's the physiological needs. So first I need a roof over my head. I need to afford shelter. And that is primary number one. And then as I jump to safety, do I want to live in a safe neighborhood? Absolutely. That becomes the next sort of most important thing. So things like schools, which is a basically schools and crime are neck and neck. And you'll see the better the schools, the lower the crime. And so those two things really drive a very high premium for master plan. Then the next one is, and this really ties into community amenities, social infrastructure. And again, whether it's active adult and I need to replace all of those friends that I've made in the place where I raised my kids and all those things, or, re-engaging that, huge premiums associated with social infrastructure and the amenities you put in place to connect people. Again, your trail systems, community events, all those things. Then as it comes to esteem and feeling accomplished, that really comes into things like the man guard gate, or, I live in this section versus that section. You start to get premiums related to, I'm going to call prestige factors. And then the last one, but I want to underscore, not the least important, we all want to afford things like green technology, giving back to the planet, all those things that really kind of fulfill the generations to come. Again, they all drive a premium, but that's kind of the order in which your customers really want these different amenities and how they tie back to what's important to us. And it's crazy how our data ties to this hierarchy of needs. So again, this is how it connects together. You can see, and I just kind of took you guys all through that. The next portion of this is just the top amenities as we look back at 2024. Water won in such a big way, and water in a lot of different ways. If you had that immediate natural connection, fantastic. You've got the villages that kind of recreated and brought the coast to a very inland location in the Florida market, or you had really great communities that just built, these fun swim parks. Again, Crystal Lagoon seemed to be really taking off. There's some really great stuff happening there. Schools, huge in building a premium. I love if you go out to Harvest by Hillwood, they have 2 elementary schools. Oh my God, they're state of the art technology, fantastic. And wow, once those schools went in, it really drove a premium, despite the fact that Argyle is a great school district to begin with. The social connectivity, it's the dancing in the park, whether you're looking at Minto's Latitude, or you're looking at the villages, or you're looking at, any of these great places that engage you. I love the story behind the villages. Doing a lot of focus groups there where people just said it's like Disneyland for adults. And you can see a lot of that resonating in communities all over. Other things that really connect people from a social perspective, just art, whether it's art in the park. Great Park Neighborhoods, I think, has a really beautiful park dedicated to art. But getting the kids in the community, whether it's school programs or whatever, involved in those art programs, it's huge. And you can see it sort of coming through in events and how it brings the community together, really. Um, the whole sort of work at home phenomenon, you've got Amazon just pulling, a lot of their employees back, and we're hearing some shifts in that category. But people are still working at home at least 1 or 2 days a week. Depending on the MSA across the country, the numbers are staggering, of people that are still working at home at least 1 to 2 days a week. And so I don't see that trend going away. And this is still very, very popular if you want to walk outside the door, but not do that 30-minute commute or 45-minute commute. The club or the community amenity is really shifting to more of, again, this could be that place to work. You could grab a beer, cup of coffee in the morning, go hang out by the pool. Again, this could be active adult, this could be multi-generational, but really sort of creating a new kind of club that's interactive. And you shouldn't have to subsidize it. There's all kinds of great ways to do this, and I'm happy to share about that. Um, Wi-Fi technology, all things digitally connected is huge to make life work today. I love Babcock's entire technology program, but I also like their community solar. And so how they've applied that is fantastic. Fitness, wellness, all things wellness, I think are big. The whole idea behind the farm to table experience, we had a great panel on this discussion, some really interesting things happening throughout the country here, but really more in the form of education, uh, above and beyond everything. And again, it's a great way from a social perspective to connect people. Not certain that it really becomes the only community garden or the answer there, but certainly if you can dedicate, I think the number was 10 to 12 acres to something like this, or you already have this in place and you want to preserve a part of it, I think the more authentic those spaces are to the original land, the better. I'm not a big fan of the more, we created this later, but I do think if it's authentic to that space and place, it's fantastic. Um, Last but not least, I'm just looking at all things, from a park perspective. So you've got pet parks, you've got the outdoor arena where people can come together and play. But I think people generally just want to get outdoor, whether it's with their kids, with their dogs, with their neighbors. I love the Pecan Square outdoor arena where you can, whether it's pickleball or events, the chili cook-off, things like that. Pickle, and more pickle is all I hear about today, particularly in active adult neighborhoods, but it seems to be the sport of choice today. So anyways, that's a recap, I think, of the big ones. When we look at overall premiums and some of those things, you'll actually see quite a big premium as it relates to water. You'll see you can get anywhere from a 30 to 50% premium as it relates to being on a crystal lagoon. I've seen schools have a huge impact, but that will have anywhere from a 10% plus on premiums for a location. You'll see a huge value in social infrastructure, but low cost to actually implement it. The multifunction between how you approach your clubs and what that actually gives back to your community is fantastic. When we look at things like solar parks, you're going to bring a lower cost to their overall everyday spending. And again, you're going to give them back, I think, a little time as well. Wellness is huge. And then, of course, the whole craving and desire for indoor outdoor connectivity, I think is huge. So, again, we talked a lot about amenities, but this hopefully will give you an idea on what the value back is in relationship to each of those amenities. So with that, I think the big thing I wanted to leave with, which I think is great, I love this by Seth Godin. What people really want is a connection, and all those amenities and everything we do in master plan is about a connection, and it's really about a human connection. So own that effect. You get to actually make change for the future in such a big way. And as we look to 2025, I hope you guys all have the best holiday ever. Um, I have a huge family, and I'm so excited to spend time with family as this year closes. I don't know how this whole entire year went so quickly, but I'm really looking forward to 2025 too. So if we can help you guys in any way, please let us know as you're wrapping up the year. Don't forget this master plan outlook. I showed you such a small portion of this, but if you want to look at like Texas or Florida and really understand not just the growth nationally, we get into the weeds really at the geography, the local geography as well. And there's some really neat stuff in there too. Even just our master plan database, if you want to check out those top 25 master plans, or even the top 10 or the top 10 active adult or the top 5 in your area, there's some really great information there as well. So with that,
Thank you.
Mr.
That
Sullivan,
was
back to you.
Thank you. Spot on. And I'm with you. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, everybody. Reach out if we can help. That's what we're here for. But most importantly, stay safe, and we will be back with you early next year. Reach out with any questions to your local representatives, to Molly or me, anytime. But with that, thank you for being with us. Safe holiday. Take care. And thanks, Molly.